Welcome to the Firs in Thornborough. We as a family have been on a low carbon journey for probably about 12 years or so. My background, I am a sustainability officer at Aylesbury Vale District Council, but I have a passion for the subject and think it's important that I lead by example. When we moved to the property, the farmer prior to us, who was doing the refurbishment of what are two workers' cottages, thought that no modern property would want old forms of heating, like a fireplace, so that was all boarded up, and he introduced an oil-fired radiator-based heating source. Now that's all very well, but I'm trying to move away from carbon fuels and high carbon intensity, so I've reinstated not a fireplace but a wood burning stove in this room and in the other room. This burns wood. Wood is sourced locally from the local environment, all within about 10-15 miles. There's nothing more satisfying on a winter evening than being able to see your fire through heat-proof glass. I also use the stoves to heat water. So in the winter months I will heat pans and I'll transfer that heated water into the kitchen where I've got thermal stores. An example of a larger thermal store, the kind of thing I would use in the winter months, a simple device we all come across these at conferences. I simply fill it with the hot water gain from the wood stove, put hot water into there. There's enough in there to last family at least a day. There's about 4 or 5 kettles worth in there, or a smaller one than I would use during the summer months. Whenever I boil a kettle, what I tend to do is, if there is a little bit of excess, that will go into the thermal store, and then I will rinse out. If it's still hot, I'll rinse out a little bit of water, and that goes into the thermal store, so it's capturing all the available energy and ensuring no waste whatsoever. We've got a monitor on which is telling me that that every time I heat a kettle, it's using roughly 700 watts of power every time I heat just over a cupful of water. Because I've been boiling the kettle several times today, as we've shown people, visitors around, you can see now that it's up to nearly half a kilowatt of power. From here we can see a relatively small solar thermal panel installation. These panels are flat plate technology, so it's basic. It's less costly than a evacuated tube technology, which simply captures sunlight in a vacuum and converts that into heat more efficiently. The only advantage, I would say, of a flat plate is less to go wrong, cheaper installation costs. This form of heat works particularly well when trying to displace the costs of oil. The panel on the roof is at 54 degrees. The second reading tells me that water coming into the bottom of the tank, solar tank upstairs in the loft, is at 42 degrees, and it's slowly beginning to heat. So at the top of the tank, it's 43 degrees, and that's temperature that is provided from the sun only and not from the thermal store. What we have got in here is a properly insulated water store, thermal store. Again, there are many of these around, so that displaces the old copper cylinder. If it was a copper cylinder, then clearly I would have a jacket of some kind on it, but there's no need for that in this case. Works in exactly the same way. Hot water out from the top where the hot water is stored. The floor in the kitchen has got underfloor heating, but in retrospect that was a bit of a mistake, because this is electrically underfloor heated, and I'd much rather have put in some kind of water-based system, so I could have powered it from solar thermal. We've got a PV system. These are the active components. These are inverters. Typically you'll see one inverter. On this system there are three, simply because of shading issues. So around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a sunny day, I'm displacing or producing electricity, some of which will be going to the local grid, but hopefully you would aim to use as much daytime electricity when your PV panels are producing electricity, by cooking or by using the power in some way such that it's not exported to the grid. This system represents on the roof a 1.7 kilowatt peak system. That's about 9 panels. The 9 panels are in production at the moment. We've got what will be found in most properties, a meter box. At the moment that is spinning and now it's beginning to turn in the other direction, so I'm generating energy, and that energy is being generated by PV panels, so I'm actually now exporting power. If we look at the lighting in this room, when I arrived there was no lighting, and initially I put in some halogens, halogen spotlights. These are very common in UK housing. You tend to find them everywhere. They can consume quite a lot of power. I've replaced those halogens, 4 spotlights in this room. I've replaced them in 2 stages. First of all, I went from 50 watts to 10 watts using this light here, which is a compact fluorescent, but these are now available as spots and in just about any shape and size. But recently I've just replaced those, so that's from 50 to 10 watts now with LEDs, which are 3 watt. LED lighting is certainly, I think, the future. It produces very little in the way of heat. Essentially I've now moved from what would have been 200 watts of electrical power when those lights were switched on, down to, when I replace the compact fluorescents, I would be using less than 20 watts. So, significant reduction in power. In terms of waste, obviously when we buy in goods, we can consider where we buy them. Is an ethical producer? Does the company or the superstore or whatever think about the carbon intensity of products, anything from baked beans or bananas or whatever? But let's go beyond that to, we've now created the waste. What do we do with it? We've got the option of throwing it in the bin. In this case, with a lot of plastics, a little bit of aluminium film, a little bit of waste that shouldn't be in there. Any organics will go into my composting bin. That's a food caddy. Although Aylesbury Vale have just introduced a new food-based waste collection scheme, if you're fortunate enough to have a garden, there's no real need for you to use that. The majority of this will go out to compost bins, which I'll show you in a moment. And about 40% of waste by weight, and not volume, weight, is organic. So you can make a huge difference. And although in the Vale we're now recycling, we've moved up from about 18%, having introduced a reduced size wheel bin with baskets. We're now collecting food waste and recyclables in one bin, whether for good or for bad. And so the recycling rate has now gone up to about 40% of domestic weight. There's no reason, if you have got a little bit of space, a little bit of land, a garden, why you can't be recycling at least 80% of your waste. Here I've just got an illustration just to make a point about using this new scheme. In this basket I've got the same quantity, exactly the same quantity of materials, so I've measured out the same number of cans, same number of plastic containers, but this just illustrates the volume of waste. Now, this is important from when you think of the logistics of collection. If this represents one full refuse Aylesbury Vale District Council refuse vehicle, this is the equivalent of uncrushed, unwashed material. With regard to payback on these technologies, we're getting to a point now where the compact fluorescents are almost as cheap as the traditional bulb. The LEDs, however, are still expensive. When I bought the compact fluorescents in here, they were £10 each. I think you can now buy GL10s for probably about £3 or £4. It's suggested that the saving on these in relatively well illuminated areas is up to £30 per bulb throughout the house. I've probably got 40 bulbs in the house, and therefore, you know, it represents a significant saving ongoing. And of course, ongoing, we're going to see energy prices increase, the cost of electricity will increase, so the payback will increase on this kind of lighting. So at the moment, we're nicely generating electrical energy, which I get paid an incentive for every kilowatt hour that I produce. To put that into financial terms, the 1,777 units now produced, for every unit I get paid 43 pence, and that adds up to an income of, when you take into consideration a small payment you get for exporting power, the feed-in tariff itself for every unit of power used, and hopefully the energy that you use produced by sunlight rather than from the grid, it adds up to about £500 a year benefit. So this system cost me just over £5,000 to install. It should pay for itself within 10 years. It's important that you understand that although the incentives are slowly being decreased by the current administration, current UK government, we've gone from 43 pence down to 22 pence. Currently, I think we've now, in August 2012, gone down to 13 pence per unit of energy you produce. So the incentive has decreased. But in that context, it's very important to understand that when people entered this market, the equivalent cost of the system I've got would have probably been about £8,000. When I installed it in 2011, it cost me just over £5,000. Now the system on the roof would cost probably closer to £4,000. Therefore, although the incentive, which used to be quite high, is decreasing, the costs of the system are also decreasing. So there's no reason why most people can't achieve a 10-year return on investment. It's still a tremendous investment, and at a time when, you know, putting savings into a bank does very little for you in terms of income, producing your own solar energy, you know, is a good investment, great incentive to reducing energy use in the home, and a great advert to your neighbours about your commitment and commitment to a community.